After 25 years of marriage, my guest today, a former construction worker, came out to his wife and 4 children. And since then, he's become a licensed counselor, formed a support group called Gay Fathers Worldwide, and is now engaged to be married, this time to a man. Joining us from Melbourne, Australia, with a fascinating story, Shaun Williams. Shaun, thanks for joining us today. Today, it's a cold winter day in Iowa. I hope it's warmer and sunnier in Melbourne.
It's a little bit nicer, David, but it's only 27 degrees, which I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit.
So in the 60s, lovely. I believe. So
yeah,
that's not really warm, but warmer than 27 Fahrenheit that I'm experiencing right now. So
it's great to be here, David. Thanks for having me.
You grew up in the 80s. What was it like at that time in Australia for gay people?
It was pretty much the same as I believe around the world. There was a lot of gay bashing. AIDS was prevalent, and it was a time where I was teased at school, or I was bullied at school for being a little bit different. So that was really challenging. It was a really challenging time. So the 80s was where I taught myself how to talk deeper, how to walk properly, how to walk like a man. So it was an interesting time in my growth. It was a challenging time for me.
When did you first know that you were gay?
Well, I knew when I was about 5. I remember when I was being 5, being attracted to, my mum and dad had a friend over, a couple over, and he was in his dressing gown. And I remember thinking, that's very nice. And I remember thinking, no one's ever going to know that I feel this way. But I always knew I was different. There was always a challenge there. And I'd always ask myself, why am I different?
So you got married in the late 90s, if I recall.
Yeah, 95 I was married.
All right. And then how did you rationalize the decision then to get married?
Well, my ex-wife now, she was my best friend. We hear this really commonly with a lot of men, that we did love our wives. We loved the connection. We loved the interaction. And our wives found something in us that I think they couldn't find in other men. And I always say to people that are coming out, we are unique. But we are also high achievers and people pleasers. So I remember getting married, and I remember thinking on the day, I'm going to the grave with my secret, because I don't want to hurt my family. I didn't want to hurt my friends. I certainly didn't want to hurt my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And she was my best friend. So it was I remember the day and having photos taken, thinking perhaps I need to stop this. But the ball was rolling, and I was mentally already struggling.
How heavy did that weight feel at the time?
It was very heavy. It was very heavy. I had a great day. Like, our marriage was amazing, and we had some in our 25 years or 24, almost 25 years of marriage, we had amazing time together. We had some great laughs. We had some great time.
Mm-hmm.
But there was always that weight. It may have been emphasized when we watched a movie about a gay couple, or you saw an attractive man, and you tried not to make it obvious that you were attracted. And then she would say things like, let's go and watch this gay comedy. And I'm thinking, that's the last thing I want to do, because it's quite triggering. So we would go and do those sorts of things, and so every time that happened, I would get that pang of guilt and shame. And it became a really heavy weight.
How did you deal with that pang of guilt and shame when you get that each time?
I would just keep burying it deeper and deeper. And as I think a lot of us know, mentally, we do some damage. We do a lot of damage by hiding our true selves. We do damage in damage that takes a lot of time to reverse. We are hurt, and we're hurting ourselves.
I know, for me, I put on this 3-foot mask is what I tell people, not consciously saying I was gay to myself,
Yeah.
I knew what the thoughts were in my head, but I didn't connect the dots. I don't know, maybe slow, stupid,
Not at all.
just in denial is probably a better way to put it, not wanting to be that way. So it was denying that, just like you, be the loving husband who cares about his wife, best friend, great memories. I don't regret any of the time I spent together. I just regret the pain it caused her when I came out, because that was not my intent, but I had to live, to survive.
And it's the last thing we ever want to do is hurt anybody. We don't want to hurt anyone. We don't want to break. We don't come into this world wanting to hurt a single soul. But we know that, and talking to other men, that we do hurt people. We break hearts. And we have to face the reality that we are living a lie. And it is a lie. It does hurt people.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once we come to the realization that we've made mistakes, and you simply need to put one foot in front of the other and start rectifying the mistakes and start living your true life and start doing what you and I are doing, reaching out, telling men that on the other side, you can actually be your true self. You can actually help. And I quite often talk a lot about my legacy. And someone said it to me one day. They said, your legacy was to actually come out and help other men.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard that, I thought, finally, I have a place in this world. And that was like a lightning bolt for me. But I didn't, at that time, even when I set up the group in 2020, that was not my intention. I just needed other people to talk to. So, yeah.
I know when I think back on 5 years, I didn't think I'd be where I am today, where it's all about outreach and service, to share the stories, to help men that were like you and me. They're there today, and so we're here for them.
Yeah. I was on a television show here almost 2 years ago, just talking about my story. And when I started in my business, I had a phone call, and it was about 12 months after the television show aired, and he said to me, it's taken me 12 months to have the courage to call you, but the day I saw you was the day I was going to commit suicide. And he said, and you stopped it, and so that is so powerful to me.
Yes, it is.
That speaks volumes. If we can stop one man from going down that dark and desperate, lonely path, then our job is far bigger and greater than we'd ever expected.
I've had that same communication from listeners, actually, that said, I'm alive because I found your podcast and I found you. I'm going.
So powerful.
It ups the responsibility level on our side of service.
But I think it puts it into perspective that people need connection, and they need to know that there's other people out in this world just like them.
That saw no hope, and yet they found joy on the other side, went through a whole bunch to get there, but there was joy on the other side. So you had 4 kids, which is a pretty sizable family and a real commitment. How much did that weigh down on you and affect the turmoil that you were feeling about coming out?
The kids actually filled up the gap because there was so much to do with the children. And as a perfectionist and a people pleaser, I was there trying to do everything for the kids as well. So it filled another gap. It filled that overthinking that we often do. It wasn't until my oldest child, she was 16, she's now 21, almost 22, she came out. And I remember sitting next to her thinking, you're coming out and I want to be there for you. And I'm incredibly sad that I can't be true to myself so I can be there for you. And then interestingly, when I came out, 2 of my other children have now identified as queer as well. So out of the 4, there's 3 queer children. And that's been fantastic, but it's also challenging in its own right as well. One's non-binary and 2 of them are lesbians. So there's been lots of learning for me, but also great that I can be really open with my children now.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to them openly about their journey, about difficulties they're having, and of course I'll always be the daggy dad, but that goes without saying. But there are times when I can connect with them on a level that is in the part of the community.
Did your daughters coming out motivate you at all or inspire you to do that yourself?
It did inspire me. And my wife and I were already having some difficulties. And it was a really challenging time. So it was part of the journey was hearing my eldest daughter coming out at 16 was very powerful for me. I just didn't realize that it was happening at the time. But looking back, it was very powerful.
You said you intended to go to the grave with this secret, the fact that you're gay. Did you really believe you could die without anybody else finding out?
Yeah, I did. I went. It's interesting. I have a mental health psychologist that I've been seeing way before I even came out, and he's become a really good, reliable therapist for me, and I still see him. But I remember going to him for about 2 years, and I went to him because I was feeling depression and anxiety, and I wanted to deal with that. I just didn't realize that the only way I could really deal with what I was dealing with is by coming out. And when I eventually said to him, I'm gay, that's when the real work really started. So he was the first one that I told. But before that, I was going to the grave. I was not going to tell a single soul.
So how did that then progress after you said, I am gay, and actually putting in words in the air into somebody else's ear? How did that affect you and shift then the whole process?
So when I told him, he actually swore at me. But he swore at me because he was shocked. He wasn't expecting it at all. And we still laugh about it because he said, right. And after he swore at me, he said, right, now we're going to start working on the process forward. And the following day I met with my wife and we went for a walk. And I told her that I was gay. We walked for about 3 hours along the beach in Melbourne here. And it was December 2019. And we had a big discussion, and she was obviously hurt. But I knew that I had to keep that momentum rolling. I couldn't keep living the way I was living, which was living with depression, anxiety, sadness, anger. I wasn't being true to who I was. And so we walked for about 2 hours. We talked, we cried. And then we discussed how we would tell the children. And I said I would, because I was living outside the home for a period of time, I said I'd like to come and talk to them the following day. So it progressed really quickly. So I sat down that night and I penned them a letter in case I didn't tell them everything I wanted to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So I penned them a letter that I was going to leave with them, and I did leave the letter with them after I told them. But we sat them down, and I remember my children just saying, "We're glad you're home. When are you coming home?" And I said, your mum and I met yesterday, and I'm not coming home. And the reason I'm not coming home is because I'm gay, and I need to sort out my life. I need to sort out what I've done and what's going to happen from here. And that was probably one of the most difficult days of my life. My children were sad, inconsolable. My youngest were 9 and 12. And it broke my heart. Eventually I didn't know what to do, but I knew I needed to leave them to grieve. My wife was angry and my children were sad. And I had to to leave, and I felt like my heart had been wrenched from me. And it was such sadness and sorrow and guilt and shame. And I thought to myself, what have I done? Why have I done this? It was heartbreaking. It was awful. And just looking back, even today, it still just makes me so sad that it had to get to that. But I look back now, and probably like yourself, and where I am now, I feel like I've got so much more control back in my life. I feel comfortable with who I am. I can say to people, I am a gay man. I love him. I'm engaged to a man. I have a relationship with my children now. I have, I often say I'm actually a better father now because I'm present. I'm present.
Interesting.
And there's still some difficulties with the children and my ex-wife, but you can't keep pushing them down. You can't keep suppressing everything. And people quite often say, the more one lie becomes another lie, becomes another lie, it snowballs out of control. I feel now that I'm juggling a little pebble, if that makes sense. It's not the snowball anymore.
Right.
So the pebble is just what I have to deal with on a daily basis. And when I'm talking to men, that are in that space, that are just coming out, and a lot of my clients are in that space, they reach out to me. And I say, the snowball will crush you. And it really does just crush you, because you can't see what the other side's like, and you're frightened. No one likes uncertainty. But I think when they start to see your story, my story, men on our group story, they start to believe there's another side. You can be happy. You can start to live how you're supposed to live, not hide it.
Beautiful story. Thank you for sharing all of that. And of what you went through, do you have any regrets the way you came out or the way it transpired, and you might redo it if you could?
I perhaps wouldn't have done it as quickly. I felt like I had a responsibility to do it quickly. But perhaps I would have sort of stepped back. I did a lot in a really short period of time. From leaving the home because my wife and I were fighting, and a couple of days later meeting my wife, and then coming out to my children. It was really quick. It was like pulling off a Band-Aid. And I think perhaps I speak to men now about having a safety net, or just thinking about, I hadn't thought about where I was living. I hadn't thought about, a safe space for me. I hadn't thought about what my friends would say. So I hadn't worked through all of that. So what I do with a lot of men now is I work through creating that safety space first, creating that really steady foundation. So when I came out, I felt like I just pulled the rug out from everyone and walked away, almost like, one of those movies where you walk away and the plane explodes behind you. That's what I felt like I had done.
Wow.
And so I teach, I work with men now about having a plan and how to do it so that you're looking after yourself. I don't think I looked after myself. I think, I know I started drinking straight after that, because that was my way of dealing with the pain. And I didn't know where to turn to. I didn't, apart from my psychologist, which was once a fortnight, that hour would go really quickly. And then I would be left to my own devices and not knowing who to talk to, where to go. I didn't have a safety net. And so I teach men now, learn from other men, talk to other men, reach out to the community. And I just think that's really important, just to find a really safe non-judgmental space where you can talk. And whether that's a counsellor that's been through what you've been through or a group of men. But back then I couldn't find anything. And there were probably hundreds of groups, to be honest, but I couldn't find what I was looking for.
Yeah, now I've found, in my process, I found the Husbands Out to Wives organization. And then there's Gamma, which I did not interact much with. And I was fortunate. I had a local group of men called the Mankind Project. Is a local group where you can be open and vulnerable. But I agree, you've got to have friends and connections and a safe person. I had a confidant, which helped me. But also, I learned in talking to other men and my own experience is the spouse. Thinking about the safety net the spouse has to be able to talk to and relieve some of that tension and pressure and know that when you come out to them, you don't bring them into the closet with you. I wouldn't recommend that. You've got to give them permission to say, talk to whomever you need to. Maybe you agree between the two of you who that is, that population, depending on where you are in the process, so they can feel safe as well.
Absolutely. It's about connection and understanding that you're not going through this alone. There are other people that have been through it. Those kinds of resources are really powerful for the spouse as well.
So now that you're personally out, the question comes is, how did the gay community accept you? Did you worry that since you were so late in life that you would offend people now that the truth is out?
It's really interesting, actually, because when I came out, I obviously was reaching out, and I reached out on social media to some private groups, and I reached out online to some private groups. And I'm a real storyteller. So if I reach out to a group, I'll tell them my story. My story, I'd hidden that for so long. I needed to tell the world my story.
Right. Shout it from the mountaintops.
Yeah. What I didn't expect was the community was a little bit harsh. I found a lot of men very judgmental, very angry that I'd had children and I was coming out. I came across some very angry individuals, and I was taken aback, and I was, this isn't fair. This is the community I want to be a part of, and you're pushing me away because I have children. I'm telling you, I'm a gay man. I want to be part of your community. And there was a lot of anger. So I was reaching out to everyone that was angry with me. And then I started to understand, some of these people want children. Some of these people, have been out all their lives. They've lost friends to, they've lost friends to AIDS. They've lost friends along the way. So then I started to understand where their anger was coming from. So some of these men are still really great mates. They've really taught me a lot.
Well, kudos for you to actually having the courage to continue the conversation in a positive way instead of just assuming and moving on.
Yeah. I think more importantly for me, it was about not defending myself, but I wanted to understand their point of view. But I think it's a wonderful community, and that's why I wanted to work in the community. It's why I made the V line to work with the community.
And so I think that coming out late in life is a kind of a special category of coming out. So from your perspective, how is that experience different for the men who come out after decades of marriage compared to those that came out, teens, 20s?
I have a real passion for the men that come out later in life. It's beautiful to see a man actually saying, I'm gay, I have children, I've made some mistakes, but I'm happy now.
Let's talk about then the gay fathers worldwide. How did that come about? Are most of the men in that group formally married, or are there gay couples who've adopted? Surrogacy? What is the mix of the group? And also, but first, the genesis for you to create it, because it didn't exist when I was coming out.
No, so when I came out, I hopped onto Grindr, and I met another father, and this was just as COVID was just hitting in Melbourne, and I talked to him online, and he was a wonderful connection. All of a sudden, this man understood me, and then he talked about another man that had children, and so just before the major lockdowns here in Melbourne, we all caught up and we went for a walk. This walk I think we walked around Melbourne for about 5 hours just talking.
Wow.
And so this was, September 2020. And we're continually going for walks and just talking in a safe space, talking about our experiences, talking about who we are. And that connection with these two fathers was incredible. I'd never felt such close friendship. I could talk to them about anything I was feeling.
Wow.
There wasn't anything I couldn't talk to them about. And I thought, my goodness me. Then I said to them, I'd love to start a private Facebook group. And then we were walking the next day and I said, I've set the group up and it's already got 12 men from around the world.
Oh my.
And I'd set up some real parameters about it being a safe space and that, you had to answer some questions. And I basically made sure that these were men that were in the same boat as me. So they had been in a heterosexual relationship and had had children from that relationship. So all of a sudden we had these men talking around the world. And then COVID hit and it hit pretty hard in Melbourne. And then we decided that we would start running monthly Zoom connection calls. It now has I'm proud to say it has over 800 members. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So I think last time we looked, it's about 45% Americans, 30% Australians. We've got Canada, Europe. It's all over the world.
Have you noticed any trends of the children of gay men that the children have in common?
We've actually noticed that a lot of the children are diverse and many of them come out as gay or come out as queer. The children, I think, see that their fathers, as heartbroken as they are, have had the courage to come out. And there are some really sad stories about children that have no longer been in contact with their fathers or they've been separated. But then you hear wonderful stories about men that haven't had contact for many years and all of a sudden their children are having children and all of a sudden they're brought back in to be the grandfather. And those are beautiful stories. But there are, like anything, there's some heartbreaking stories about men whose children have deserted them completely. Mm-hmm. Or their ex-wife has chosen not to speak to them again. But there are a lot of queer children out there.
I had that same experience like you as well.
Yeah.
And
which is really exciting.
A friend of mine, he posted his highlights of 2023. He was estranged from his family and a child had a grandchild and he's holding this new baby in his arms in 2023.
That's beautiful.
As I tell people that come to me, I said, the first reaction you get may not be positive, it may be positive, but play the long game. If it changes, if it's not a positive at first, just take the high road because it has the potential to change to where that relationship will come back if it's important to you. If you want it to repair, then you've got to do the work and do your part and be patient.
Yeah, you do. And I think that's really interesting is to be patient. It won't happen overnight, but I think if you can just show the world, be present in the moment as you are. Mm-hmm. This is exactly who I am. And the children one day will understand. Mm-hmm. They will come back.
I would agree. I've learned so much about myself as a human being. Oh my goodness. I'm so glad. So let's talk about your new life. What's up? You mentioned before that you're maybe getting married again.
Yeah. So one of those dads that I met originally when we were walking, he and I just, it was magic. I can't express to you, I've never in my whole life been able to talk about anything openly. And when I met him, I was working in construction and construction was being really I was really struggling with my job. Everything sort of imploded for me all at once. My marriage, coming out, my work. And so there was lots of questions for me. When I met my partner and I was struggling with work as well, he said, well, now's the perfect time to study. I said, oh, yeah, why not throw that into the mix as well? Why not, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I sort of flippantly threw that off. But then the seed was planted, and I remember being at work going, I'm making lots of money, but I'm incredibly unhappy. And I thought, okay, so there was a couple of situations where I was actually being bullied at work because I'd come out, and I thought, okay, this is a sign that I need to start making some changes. So my partner, thankfully, I said to him, okay, I'm going to study. Yeah.
So did Ben Couch then counseling come out of that studying endeavor?
Yes. Yeah, it did. So I knew then that I wanted to work with the LGBTQIA plus community. And yeah, I've been in business now. I remember October 2022, I opened the doors, and it was, clients started coming through, and it was as I expected, men reaching out that were going through a similar situation to myself. So it's just been over 12 months, but every day is wonderful. I love my job. I can be dealing with the hardest of life situations, but I love the connection. I love meeting new people. I love talking to people about their journeys, because what I see, even when someone's so broken and sad, by working with them for a period of time, and that might be a couple of months, that might be a couple of weeks, that might be, it might be 12 months. Mm-hmm. I love seeing the turnaround. I love seeing the end, well, not the end product, because no one ever comes to an end of the product, but I love seeing their journey. And there are times when some of my clients, we reflect on when they arrived, and we look at the journey, and I say, can you imagine being where you are now? And people are just overwhelmed. They love the journey. Mm-hmm. And so I come down, I'm upstairs in my house here, and sometimes I float down the stairs because and my partner just says, you look so light. Like you've dealt with people's issues all day. But I come down and I feel like my bucket's been filled because I'm helping other people. And I didn't realize the power of helping others.
You're living the joyful purpose that you're on the planet for that you didn't realize until now.
Yeah.
Your bliss, as they say, your bliss.
Yeah. I want to tell men, you're not broken. You're loved. You will find connection. I talk to a lot of men who lose friends, and they lose family, they lose friends when they come out, but they find connection. There is life after coming out. The hardest part is to say, I'm gay, and then start dealing with it. That's the biggest step. And if I can help, and like yourself, if we could help one man just realize that it's okay to be gay, it's okay to have those feelings, to be sexually attracted to men, then our job's done.
Well, Shaun Williams, thank you so much for being here today. A fantastic conversation. Thanks, I know this will touch people that we don't even know are out there. We may never hear from them, but they'll be comforted to knowing, as you said, they're just themselves, and there's a community out there that loves them.
Absolutely.
Coming out can be a lonely and isolating experience. It is natural and normal to feel scared and unsure of what the future holds. As Shaun emphasizes, it is important to have a safe space to share and explore our emotions with the others who have had similar situations. Through his own coming out, he saw such a need and created the Gay Fathers Worldwide community on Facebook as a safe space to meet other men with common experiences. Just knowing others have traveled the same path and found a comfortable, if not joyful place in future can be powerful and reassuring. As we talked about in previous episodes, for the closeted gay man, isolation is our worst enemy. In addition to seeking help from a therapist, coach, or friend, finding a community of others can help break the isolation, as well as provide the insight from others and hopefully realize there's the potential for a positive future, even on the darkest days.